Hello YouTube, this is Bruno. I'm selling a lot of stuff in my shop, and recently Magma blocks are selling like hotcakes for whatever reason. And since my old farm didn't produce enough Magma blocks, I designed and built this new farm here, which produces over 30k Magma blocks, or 120,000 Magma cream per hour. It's a 2-player farm, so you need 1 player in the Nether and 1 player in the overworld. But I will give you single player options at the end of the video. So how does it work? 1 player stands in the Nether and spawns in the Magma cubes. So the Nether side is not very interesting, I'm afraid. The other player sits in the overworld and kills the Magma cubes that come out of the portal using a looting and sweeping edge sword. Now this side is a bit more interesting, and we'll talk about it in a moment. I had previously built this combined Magma cream and froglight farm here. This one gives around 30,000 froglights per hour and about 16,000 Magma cream, but that's only 4,000 Magma blocks per hour. I'm keeping the farm for the froglights, 30,000 per hour isn't too shabby, but for the Magma cream I needed a new farm. So let's head over to Creative and show you the design of the farm. So for this farm you don't need a perimeter or anything fancy. Just about 2 shulkers of obsidian that you can get from piglin bartering or mining the end pillars. So the nether side is completely in a basalt delta, where nothing spawns but magma cubes and ghasts, and our portals are too low to allow ghast spawning, so we will only spawn magma cubes here. You could of course make this a complete portal spam, that is stack only portals, so replace the dirt between the portals with portals as well. You can, however, conserve quite a lot of obsidian by using these 2 white platforms between the portals, because large and medium magma cubes will intersect the portal immediately, so whenever we spawn them, they will be immediately teleported to the overworld. Now small cubes might stay here for a bit, but eventually they will start jumping and either jump into a portal or despawn after 30 seconds or something. So if you operate the farm a while, you can see that the mob cap stays pretty empty, maybe goes to half of the mob cap, something like 30 or 35 mobs after a while. So these small magma cubes that hang out between the portals don't interfere in any way. The overworld kill chamber is pretty simple. The magma cubes fall out of the portal and slime pushers will push the cubes towards the player who stands here hitting an armor stand. And the slime pushers will push the magma cubes inside the range of the player. The player holds a sweeping edge, looting and sharpness sword, with mending of course, and kills the magma cubes. The lowest layer consists of cobwebs, so the magma cream falls right through into this water stream. And then we have 9 double speed item filters and send the magma cream right to the crafters. The item filters are the usual Il Mango design double speed item filters, where you have to pre-fill the hoppers below the filter hoppers with full stacks of the item that you want to filter, and the top hopper has the usual filter setup. Of course, in this case I use the signal strength independent filters that allow me to have 20 renamed filter items here, and they can pick up to 62 of the items that come in. We also have a pressure plate here, so whenever loot goes over the pressure plate we will activate this pulse extender, which activates this observer clock, which powers these rails, and these observers power the crafters that craft up the magma blocks. I don't need a ton of magma cream, but it makes sense to have some magma cream, for example for brewing. So here is a hopper that just sends the items down unfiltered into a double chest, so you get a double chest of magma cream where you can pull out the magma cream if you need it. The magma cream goes into shulker loaders, and whenever you see in my videos white wool, then I use this to count items. So what I can do here is, using the carpet mod, say counter reset, tick warp the farm for a while, and then it will count all items that are sent from hoppers into these wool blocks. So if I run counter, it will tell me how long it's been counting and what the average is. Of course, when you build this, you will replace the wool with shulker boxes. These are the usual triple speed shulker box loaders by Glotz. And here in the back we have a simple shulker box crafter that will make sure that there are shulker boxes in these chests all of the time. And this leads to the shulker box loaders. At the back of the portal we have a couple of boats with chickens in them that help a bit pushing out the cubes. Note that the player is wedged into the kill spot with the slab here. Now the reason is it can happen, even though very rarely, that zombified piglins will spawn in this portal and they have thorns armor. And these guys would push the player back if the player hits them. So the slabs and the blocks around the player make sure that the player stays in place indefinitely. Of course we have a couple of beacons, one for regeneration and one for strength. And in the world download, this is not part of the farm of course, I have a few command blocks that allow you to spawn in carpet bots. So if you go to the world download, if you run carpet, you just have to hit the node block. Sometimes you have to hit the node block twice to spawn in the bots. One in the nether, Steve, and Alex here in the overworld hitting the armor stand. Otherwise, we do get a few more items than Magma Cream here, namely rotten flesh and a bit of gold from the occasional zombified piglin spawning in the portals. So at the end of this water stream we burn the remaining items. The portal in the overworld is aligned with the center of the farm in the nether. That means the coordinates of the center block here align with the center of the farm. And I have placed a glass block here, which has no function, it's just there to mark the center. So if you want to build this farm, just take the coordinates of this glass block, multiply x and z by 8, and you have the coordinates of the portal in the overworld. I suggest to build the kill chamber high in the air, at least 128 blocks over the solid ground, so that you don't spawn mobs down there. And any magma cubes that escape the kill chamber would despawn immediately. Now I have set up an access portal a couple of 100 blocks away. So in survival you can use this access portal to get to this area and fly here. The access portal links to a second player in the nether, which is also something like 30 blocks away. You just have to make sure that the magma cubes do not end up in this portal here after you build the farm. The rates of the farm in the 10-hour simulation were over 30,000 magma blocks or 120,000 magma cream. Of course on a multiplayer server the rates are usually a bit lower than in single player. This is the basic design. Now let's tell you about a few design choices I made. First, it's important to know that we get the magma cream only from large and medium cubes. The small ones drop nothing when killed. That's why we don't care about these small cubes in the nether. If we send them over or if they despawn, it doesn't really matter. And second, the big issue in this farm here is entity cramming. So we usually have about 200 to 300 mobs in the kill chamber here at any time. And whenever we have more than 24 mobs in one place, then they get damage from cramming. Now we can prevent entity cramming using ladders as such, but the problem then is that the magma cubes will climb outside of the range of the player, so that's not an option. And the other problem is that magma cubes do not drop a lot if they are killed by cramming. So a magma cube, if killed by entity cramming, will drop 1/4 of a magma cream on average, while we get 1.75 or 7 times as much if they are killed by the player using looting. So this kill chamber tries to kill as many of the large and medium magma cubes by looting. So hopefully the large and medium magma cubes will stay here on top, where there's less traffic, while the small magma cubes will filter down to the bottom, where they will cram each other. And entity cramming also limits the rates of this farm. We could obviously add a ton more spawning spaces here in the nether. We don't use all that much spawning area here. But then the rates of entity cramming would go up as well, and we have vastly diminishing returns. In fact, I tried to add 50% more spawning spaces to that and got only 15% more drops, which is quite disappointing. But of course 50% more lag. So by adding spawning spaces we just get more lag, but not a lot more drops. I think this amount of spawning spaces is a good compromise. If we turn off entity cramming, then the rates go up about 50% In other words, we lose about a third of the drops due to entity cramming, which is kind of okay. Of course, you could make the area in the nether smaller if you don't have a lot of obsidian, for example, but then the rates will go down roughly linear in the size of the spawning platforms. So let's set this to peaceful. You can see that we do have stairs here at the bottom that help a bit with the entity cramming down here. But if we use stairs higher up, the magma cubes will climb out of the player's range. So this is about the best we can do. Alright, so why don't we make this into a froglight farm? By bringing in some frogs to kill the small magma cubes. The reason is once again entity cramming. You'll get a ton of small magma cubes, so you'd need a ton of frogs to kill them. And then you would run into entity cramming, which would eventually kill your frogs. And at some point all of the frogs would be dead and only the magma cubes would be alive. So whenever you do a froglight farm, you must be careful not to send more magma cubes than your frogs can handle. Finally, however, there is one issue. If your player stops swinging, like so, then the small magma cubes will fall down. Now a lot of them will die due to entity cramming, but a few will fall through and end up here. The AFK player is quite safe because the cubes can't get back up. But if you start the farm, it's probably best to first move the one player in to kill the magma cubes, start swinging, and then send the other players to spawn in the cubes. Now you could work around this by replacing these cobwebs with something else and then use hopper minecarts and yeet the magma cream. But I don't think this is a big issue, so I kept a more simple kill chamber without the need of using any minecarts. Okay, what about single player? Here's a setup that works in single player, but unfortunately the rates are a lot lower, around 12k magma blocks per hour, or something like 50,000 magma cream. That is just 40% of the two-player setup. And the reason is that the mob cap restricts us very much in the setup, because we have a ton of mobs here in the kill chamber, and when we have over 70 mobs here in the kill chamber, then nothing will spawn down on the bottom. So how does the setup work? The spawn area is pretty much the same as the two-player version, except that it's more expensive, because this time we do care about the small magma cubes and want to get them out of the nether. So here we have just pure portal spam in a 31 by 31 area, but not as many portals as in the two-player version, so this is not as high. In the overworld, I will use the same bridge that I have used for my combined froglight and magma cream farm. So the magma cubes come out of the portal, go into scaffolding, where they will slowly rise to the top. And once they arrive here, they will start pushing each other into the other portals. And this process is sufficiently slow that they will be in the overworld for over 15 seconds, because entities that come out of a nether portal have a 15-second cooldown before they can enter another portal. Now a few of the magma cubes, a very small percentage, gets to the portal before the cooldown is over. So just to be safe, we have added kill chambers at the end. So this powder snow will kill all magma cubes that do not go through the portals. Because in single player if no player is in the overworld, then these magma cubes would not despawn. So if you just let them fall down, they do not take any fall damage, nothing would happen to them. So you have to kill them off somehow. These portals lead back to the kill chamber, which is pretty much the same as we used in the two-player version, except of course that we can't use water stream in the nether, so we use slime pushers here. And we don't need as many filters because the rates are lower. Now this setup here is not a good idea on the server, because if any other player is in the overworld, the magma cubes will despawn immediately, because no player is within 128 blocks. So if you play on a server, you could run this version of the farm only if no other players in the overworld. So it's better to just build the two-player version and to ask a friend to AFK for you. If you play single player, you can do this of course, but if you have the carpet mod installed, then I suggest to use a carpet bot and run the two-dimensional version of the farm, because again, the rates are much higher. And that's about it for this farm. I will give you 2 world downloads, one for the two-player version and one for the single-player version. I will also give you Litematicas. And I must say I'm quite happy with this farm. It took me maybe 2 or 3 hours to build this in survival. I ran it for a couple of hours and you can see we have a large amount of magma blocks. And of course this chest over here is filled as well. We do have a few magma cube heads because we have player heads on the server. And this fell in while building. I'm pretty confident that I can produce the magma blocks faster than the other players can buy them. So I'm happy. Yeah, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you want to see more content like this. Please subscribe so that you don't miss any of my videos, and see you next time. Bye bye.